Okay, with the default form set up, we can now go ahead and start setting up our actual field wrappers and make sure that they all interact with each other correctly. So first thing I'll do is actually create the field wrapper component that's going to happen inside of our form directory. So I'll call this field wrapper.js. Go to my index.js. I'm going to import field wrapper from /field wrapper, and then we'll go ahead and export this as well. Let's go to here. We're going to do that same process, export default null, index.js, and then let's go ahead and define our stories. So once again, we're going to do, let's close that navigator out, stories of. This time what I'm going to do though, and this is a way I like to organize components like this, where basically there's one common API, but there's multiple components that relate to each other. Something you can do within Storybook is actually set up nesting. So what I'll do is say form/field wrapper. Again, we'll pass module to it, and then we can add our little decorator of buffer view, and we can start writing our stories starting with default. So after that, we'll make sure we actually import our field wrapper. So by default, what all do we want to happen? Well, we'll just pass our required fields, so we can have our label here, which is going to be the single required field that our field wrapper is going to have, and we'll just pass a label of email for right now. And then inside of here, I'm going to add some text, and we'll just say hello wrapper. So that's kind of our primary one. What other ones will we have though? We'll have a case where there's an error message passed to it. We'll get to that in a moment. We'll also have one where there are multiple fields. How are we going to check how they interact with each other when there's multiple fields? So we'll go ahead and do one of those. And I think that should be good. We can check you could also do a success message. We can add that in here just to see how you can pass that different props. So that should be good. Let's go ahead and actually not implement these, but add these test cases in here. So we've got our error message. So when there's an error message, we'll actually want to pass the message. So we'll just say, please enter a valid email. And then we can also pass a message type. And basically, I kind of make up props as I go. So as I'm talking my way through it, I do talk to myself when I code. I use just kind of the verbs that make sense of, or use props based off of what I'm saying. So my message type here is going to be an error. And then for here, for our success message, I've just copied that previous one, and I'll go ahead and change message to looks legit. And then we can change message type to success because it's a successful thing. Okay, and then let's go ahead and copy this. For multiple fields, I'll go ahead and wrap these in a react.fragment because we can only return one thing from a function, so we'll just wrap it in a fragment. And then let's just go ahead and take all of our previous messages, all of our previous tests, and add them in here. And the reason I'm doing this is there's going to be multiple fields typically in a form. So I want to make sure that they interact well together. Does the spacing look all right as we go along? So there's all of our tests. Let's go ahead, open up the actual Storybook page. And you can see here we've got our button, we've got our form, which has its default cases, and then we've got our field wrapper inside of here. And as we would expect, nothing's showing up because our field wrapper right now is just returning null. Okay, so we'll close out all these extra files we don't need. We just need our form.stories and our field wrapper. And we can start implementing it. Save time, I'll just go ahead, paste those in here. Our typical imports. We're also going to set up our styles. Style is equal to stylesheet.create. We're going to export default. And instead of an implicit return, we're actually going to use kind of a normal return so we can do some conditional stuff. Okay, so our field wrapper, well, first off, we're going to wrap it in a view that kind of contains everything. Let's go ahead and add our props. So we know we're going to have our children, which is going to be text input, switch, text, whatever. We're going to have a label. we're going to set our label to default to an empty string. We'll set a message, default that to an empty string, and then a message type. So just kind of thinking forward, if our message type is equal to success, we'll do something else. If our message type is equal to error, we'll do something else. And then going down in here, we're going to have our text, which is going to be our label. Then we'll render our children. And then beneath that is where we'll actually render our message. Okay, so I think this all looks good. And then we can see we've got our email, we've got our hello wrapper. Yeah, that all looks good. If we go over here to our error message, success message, cool. We'll start with this success message. Actually, we'll start with default. Makes the most sense. So what are we going to need to do? Well, our container is going to have a styles.container. We'll have a label that has a style of styles.label text. And then our message, basically this could be a success message or an error message. So we're going to have an array up here. We're going to call this message styles. That's going to be an empty array for right now. And we can apply that down here. So I have style is equal to message styles. Cool. So let's work our way from the label text. So our label text is going to have a color of colors.gray, font size of 18, and then a margin bottom of 10. Okay, that's looking good to me. So basically, yeah, that's the label. That's our default case. Let's go ahead, check out our error message. We want to style that. So basically, kind of looking back to our button, we're going to have a base class or base styles that we're then going to modify slightly if it's a success or an error message. So in this case, we're going to have message text. We're also going to have message success and then message error. We're going to set the colors to colors.gray on its default case. We'll set a font size of 13 and then margin bottom of 5, just because we don't want things cramping our style. Okay, message success. All we're going to do here is change the color, so we can say colors dot success, and then for our error message, we can say colors dot error. Okay, going down to our message styles, we'll start with our styles dot message text. If it's a success, we'll say message styles.push, styles.message success. If it's an error, we'll push message.error. All right, starting to look good to me. And I put a margin bottom up here, but really I wanted to add a margin top. Okay, so that looks good. So we've got our label set up, we've got our error message. Let's check out the success message one. Looks legit. And then multiple fields. Looks pretty good. One thing I do notice is it's kind of cramped down here. If we do have that error message, then there's no spacing here. So what we can do is add some margin to our container. So I'll go ahead, add it up here, and we'll say container is going to have a margin bottom of 20. So I think this looks good. Basically, ignore this hello wrapper part because that's going to be whatever the actual field type is. But we do have our field wrapper that can take any type of child here, be it a text input, a switch, whatever. We've got our label, we've got our messages, we've got different message types, and we can really use this basically like in our forms. Say, if you went through the forms guide on React Native School, you could go ahead and start tacking in the formic validation stuff or the yup validation into this and kind of change that out to really do whatever you want it to do within your form. So here, yeah, we've got the field wrapper. I'm going to wrap this up and we can move on to the next one.